On the final day of the last 2 years, Studio Ladus has released a singular episode of OVA for Fate Grand Order, the gacha game. I was a bit confused by it, but hey, I'm a Fate fan, I'll take it. My basic reaction was, why not? Which is kind of ironic considering that my basic reaction to the episodes after I've seen them is, why? Since the 2 OVA episodes are more or less standalone, I'm going to address them first individually before talking about them overall. The first one, Fate Grand Order First Order, is, well, the more decent of the 2. It is a solid 3 stars, totally generic and with nothing to recommend it, but also pretty inoffensive. Fate Grand Order First Order is an exact adaptation of the first part, First Order, of the Fate Grand Order gacha game. It's a gacha game. You're not expecting deep plot from this material, and the show doesn't add to the plot in any way, shape, or form. I've played through the gacha game version, and it's literally the same thing. Which is kind of disappointing, because they could totally have built on that to give it some emotional depth, and they didn't. But, on the other hand, I will admit that there were a few moments that were mildly enjoyable. Caster Cuchulainn was both badass and entertaining, and so yes, it was worth seeing him animated. And also, getting even a few seconds of Saber Alter animated was pretty awesome considering that she'd never been animated before. Of course, then Heaven's Field Passage Flower came out, rendering that point moot, but still, it was cool. The basic plot is very like that of the Token Rambu games. Basically, various catastrophes befall Earth in which the past is being altered, and so masters travel back in time, summoning servants to keep the past the same, lest humanity be destroyed. The story follows the destruction of this group, already more interesting than the Token Rambu anime, leaving just one master stranded in the desolate remains of Fuyuki. At the same time, a human girl who was an assistant to this project was injured and nearly killed in the catastrophe that destroyed this order, but at the same time, a servant of unknown origins partnered with her, allowing her to become what's called a demi-servant. Half servant, half human, of a classification never before seen, a shielder. Thus begins their adventures, or rather, thus begins half an episode's worth of adventures because we spend half an episode getting there, but still, even so, it's still relatively, well, if not enjoyable per se, then at least harmless and inoffensive. And again, Cuchulainn is actually still an entertaining character. Even if Masha and our protagonist, whose name I honestly can't remember because he's just the player character from Grand Order, even if they're just still generic, whatever. Again, at least we get some Cuchulainn funness. Now, when I heard that the studio was going to be making another Grand Order adaptation, I assumed they'd continue on to the first Singularity, the next part of the Grand Order game. And I was actually decently okay with the idea of them animating that, since I feel like the first Singularity's story is a bit more entertaining than First Order, and I'm also a pretty big Joan of Arc fan, so I wouldn't have minded seeing some more animated time for her now that Apocrypha has wrapped. Plus, seeing an animated version of Ruler Alter would have been absolutely awesome and totally worth it. However, what we got instead was Fate Grand Order Moonlight Lost Room. And what the hell even is it, and why did they make it? Great questions I'm going to try to answer and probably fail because I honestly can't figure it out. If First Order is more or less the prologue for Fate Grand Order, then Moonlight Lost Room seems to be more or less the epilogue, which makes no goddamn sense. For a couple of reasons, one being that as of the last OVA the story was only just beginning, and another being that Fate Grand Order is still ongoing. I guess you could call this a sort of halfway cutaway to a new story, which it kind of is, but even that doesn't really work considering, and I'll get to why in a minute. But anyway, the fact that it's a sort of epilogue isn't what's weird about Grand Order Moonlight Lost Room. Oh gods, no, I wish that was the problem. No! So we start with a sort of Christmas celebration thing going on that's with the people back at the base, and that doesn't really make sense because, again, unless things have changed significantly, and I mean they totally could have, but I'm not up to date with Grand Order, but assuming they haven't, as of the end of the first OVA, and as of the continuity it establishes, everyone, with the exception of like 3 or 4 characters on base, have been killed, and they're not getting any new people. So where did all these people casually chatting and hanging out come from? But okay, sure. Then for a moment I was like, what if this is before the beginning of the first one? But no, they refer to events and have characters who appeared for the first time in First Order. So clearly, continuity-wise, this is afterward. Then we end up in this ghost room thing, and we see a character who clearly died at the end of First Order. And they start developing her and giving her a little bit of fleshing out, which I'm not complaining about because that's cool and all, except they're telling it from her point of view, which is weird because she's dead. Now again, it could totally be interesting to tell a story from the point of view of a ghost or someone who has already died. But that's not the thought experiment that this show is trying to engage in. No, it just sort of did it without any explanation, which again made no sense. Especially since as soon as she leaves the room, the characters remark they don't even remember who it is, and suddenly things are from their perspective instead of hers. It is weird. Also, there's a brief amount of time in which the player character's perspective, well, in which we're supposed to be looking through his perspective because we see his hand moving and stuff, but we never see his face. So it's as though we are in his seat, except then there are other parts of the episode where we do see him as a character walking around. So again, what? There are also 2 fight scenes. The first one involves said dead character as a master, and first off, that doesn't make any sense because one of the keys to her character is the fact that she has no potential to be a master, so clearly she never was one. But then, alright, it involves her as a master, and it's this grand hero battle, and I guess it was cool. I mean, it was cool that we got to see some of the servants we know. Gilgamesh and some of the others were there, which was pretty neat, especially getting to see them reclassed. But it was all but impossible to tell which side of the battle they were even on. Who was on whose side, who was enemies with who, so the fight had no context, even in that small way, and no context in any greater way in terms of giving us a narrative stake or goals for the characters or what the characters were fighting about, or anything really. And if they were just trying to give us flashy eye candy, that means they're trying to compete with Ufotable, and no, just no. After we break through most of the layers of our multi-layered reality-bending dream things, we get another fight scene, and that fight scene is pretty much the same deal. Again, the servants look cool, and the fighting's flashy, and again, there is absolutely no context. We have no idea what's going on, who's on whose side, who's fighting who for what, and why, and where, and how, and why we should care. Again, it's just eye candy, except it's not, because if I wanted eye candy, I could just go watch Unlimited Budget Works or Heaven's Fund. Now, maybe the overarching messed up, not a plot that I've explained poorly because I have no idea what I'm supposed to be explaining, would make a bit more sense if you'd played all of Grand Order, but as I'm only a couple of singularities in myself, I don't know. What I can pass judgment on is how well it stands up independently, semi-independently when connected to the other anime adaptation, and as a narrative as a whole. And in that case, in all 3 cases, it sucks! At least with the first one, I had a clear sense of what was happening, point A to point B. Here, I have no goddamn idea what the plot is or what they thought they were doing. And that leads me to my next point. Who are they doing this for? Specifically, who the heck did they think they were doing this for? Now clearly, these anime adaptations are advertisements for the gacha game. That's obvious. The first one is kind of makes sense. I mean, it's an adaptation of Grand Order's First Order. It's the beginning, it's the prologue of Grand Order, so I guess that makes sense. People watch that and they go, hey, that could be fun, maybe I'll go play that. But my big problem with that is it actually ruined First Order for me, because when I was playing through the prologue, I was like, great, I've already seen all of this, why do I care? Still, that's not a guarantee that it'll feel that way to everyone, and I'm betting a lot of people will genuinely want to play through it and get to the next couple of singularities because they're interested. So alright, I'll give that one the pass on marketing. That was clearly made both for people who had played Grand Order and then wanted to see the first Singularity animated, and then also as an advertisement. Whereas this Moonlight Lost Room that just came out, I guess, again, it might make some sense to people who are totally up to date. So I guess you could say, oh, this was an adaptation entirely meant for people who are in the know, people who have played it already, but at the same time, I also know that they're making these adaptations as advertisements for the game. So what's the point of an advertisement that only people have already played the game and are already into the game enough to watch it are going to get? Especially considering that they knew that people who had watched First Order would be watching this, because if they just made this and not First Order, you could have said, okay, this was maybe a bonus for people who played the game. But because they'd already picked up people's interest or gotten people to watch First Order, and then this was a sequel to First Order OVA, yeah, that, again, that doesn't quite work. But okay, fine. Whatever, I'm not gonna question what the hell they think they're doing. Oh, yeah, I am. What the hell did they think they were doing? Okay, that said, again, maybe this has some significance for people who have played through all of Grand Order. I don't know. What I do know is that from my perspective, from the perspective of someone judging it on its qualities as an anime, it sucked, and that is why I'm going to sum up by demoting the Fate Grand Order OVAs from the 3 stars I would have given them when there was just First Order, to the 2 stars I'm going to give it now, because Moonlight Lost Room was honestly such an incomplete waste of time and animation budget. Let's move on to something better, alternate anime recommendations. First off, I'm going to begin by recommending that you watch Fate Stay Night. Not Unlimited Playworks, not Heaven's Feel, the original Stay Night, because yeah, that's better than this. If you're looking for an anime with a similar plot or lack thereof, but that actually delivers on the eye candy intrigue of animation, I'm going to recommend Ufotable's Katsugi Token Rambu. And if you're actually looking for a good, complex story with strong characters and awesome action sequences about characters traveling back in time to avert a horrible future, let me recommend Fire Emblem Awakening. Oh wait, that's a video game, in which case let's go with ReZero. Not my favorite anime by any extent, but still far better than this. Now then, I'm off to watch an actually promising Fate video game adaptation in Fate Extra Last Encore. And if you want to watch something else Fate related, then why not head over to my channel? If you want to hear me complain more about Fate problems, then why not watch my video on Disability and Fate Apocrypha, where Guilty Crown did right. However, if you're interested in my thoughts on a much stronger Fate adaptation, then why not check out my review of Fate Stay Night Heaven's Feel Passage Flower. This is Coriander Stone, and I thank you for watching.